Okay, hello everyone. In this session, we're going to continue the process, the tool logic that I skimmed through when I explained it previously. I skimmed through a lot of parts, so hopefully in this one I'll explain in more detail how a tool works. Okay, so we were previously here in this function, process tool call, and we saw how it gets used here. We get strings, like messages, okay, or dictionaries of messages, and then we log that into the database. And internally, this will add these messages to the self.message history, the message history that we have, the current chat that we have with the user. Okay, so that's what we know. But what's happening here? What are these exact things, and what does process tool call do internally? So let's go through that one by one. Okay, so let me open up Zen mode here. Okay, so you have, let me go line by line here. Again, I said this part of tool name is not in the list of tool names that we defined above in here. Okay, in the get tool name function. Then we return. Okay, so let me go take a deep dive. I'm sorry, into this class, the search Quran or search Hadith or search class. So search Quran and all of these are in a folder called tools. We have a couple of files here. Okay, search Hadith. These are all the tools that we have in the system right now. And they all have the following structure. So I'm going to explain one of them, and then you understand how the rest works. We take any global variables, any keys here. For here, we're using kalimat. What is kalimat? I'll explain that in a second. And then we have the tool name. We specify that globally as well. And then we define the class here. Okay, what does this class do? We take these keys, okay, right here as attributes, and then we get the tool description. What is the tool description? Okay, I'll tell you what is the description in a second. Basically, we are trying to give a description to the LLM, which is in our case your OpenAI model, and we're saying, I want you to recognize that we have a tool, we have a function that we defined ourselves as developers, and this function is called search Quran. Okay, that's its name. Now, I want to tell you, Mr. LLM, that in order for you to deduce that the user query could be answered by running this tool, you can understand this description that I will give you. What is this description? We're saying search and retrieve irrelevant ayahs based on a specific topic, returns multiple ayahs when applicable. Okay, so this is its description. We are describing here how do we and when do we expect this tool to run. Okay, and the LLM understands this, and so when applicable, and so when the user asks a question related to specific ayahs, and it's normally related to the user wanting to know about certain ayahs, again, know about ayah 2:2 or know ayahs about patience or whatever, then the LLM will see the descriptions of all of its available tools and then say, okay, based on this description, I see that the user is technically trying to search and retrieve relevant ayahs based on a specific topic, which is patience in this example. And so let me return to him multiple ayahs, okay, using this function. Okay, the function called search Quran. Okay, and so that's what the LLM tells itself internally. We also tell the LLM the parameters that we expect this search Quran to have. We say that we have a type of object. I think this syntax is standardized. Okay, and then we say here in this part the parameters that we expect to be passed to the function. Okay, here's a tricky thing that I actually explained wrongly in the previous recording or a couple of minutes ago, is that, remember when I told you, let me get back to the query part. Query. Let me say, we'll see where it is. No, not workflow steps. Sorry. Yeah. Remember when I said that? Remember when I gave example that the tool args, when the LLM returns arguments, we say that it's returned like this. Okay, we say a query and then the 2.2 in the example that I gave. Remember that part? That's not completely, that's true in this case. That's what's happening here. But I think I said that this is the standard syntax. Like we always get no, this is not really the case. It depends on on what we say to in the description of the tool that we're using. Okay, and since we're using multiple tools, we had to standardize. What do I have to standardize? We had to say, if I recall correctly, in each of these return values, like in each of these descriptions of the search Quran tool and of the search Mawsu'a tool and search Hadith tool, all of the tools, we had to say that we expect a parameter called query. Okay, so I believe if we go here, okay, why is the file not found? Okay, one second. Did we delete that? One second. Where is the explorer? Search Hadith, yeah, okay, sorry. And I wanna hide, okay. Yeah, you'll see query here as well, okay? So that the structure is similar, and we require a query. The required here means that when the LLM calls this, or when the LLM recognizes that we need this function, okay, and generates parameters for it, the LLM must generate the parameter called query. That's what requires mean, okay? And so if there are parameters defined here, but aren't mentioned required here, then the LLM can or cannot, or may not generate them, okay? So that's another thing, based on what it sees fit, based on the user's description, the user's query. Okay, so this part, the query here has to be mentioned. And when we say this part, again, we are saying, okay, LLM, when you generate for us parameters or arguments, okay, based on what you understand from these queries, please mention the parameter's name as query. Okay, that's what this part says. And this query, when you generate it, we expect that to be a string. That's why you've seen the example that I gave. The query and its value is 2:2, the surah and the verse number. It will be a string because we specified that you shall return it as a string. Okay. Okay. So what if this was an integer? Okay. And the search ayah function just gets you the surah, not the verse. Then we would have returned something like this. It would have been query, and then 2 for Surah Al-Baqarah, or 1 for Surah Al-Fatah. Okay, and it will be like that. It will be like that, but this obviously is in a string, and the value will be an integer if we specify this type to be an int. Okay, that's an example. Again, you have to return to OpenAI documentation to see what it expects. Like maybe tool calls in OpenAI expect when we say an int, we say it an integer, not an int. So these are just terminologies based on the SDK that we're using, the LLM provider we're using. So you can return back to that for reference. And the description for what this query, for what this parameter represents. Description, topic or subject matter to search for in Hadith collection, but because this is Hadith, so I'm sorry, I should have returned to our search Quran example. Search Quran. You'll see it here, topic or subject matter to search for within the Holy Quran. Okay. This, along with the general description of the function, the LLM understands internally and then sees any user query when they ask the front end of Ansari and say, okay, based on from what I understand from the description here and the description of the parameters here, I think this function is a function that we want to use internally. Okay, so that's how it maps this logic. So this is a good tool description. Where do we use that? We use that, and again, all of that syntax, the way we write this syntax, these specific key names, these are based on the documentation of OpenAI. Okay, okay. So where do we use that? In here, in self.tools attribute in Ansari, we is a list of the tool descriptions, which is a list of strings, because that's a return value of tool description. Okay, so these are the descriptions for the tools. And so where do we use this? Use it here. Remember that part when I was discussing the unpacking thing with the parameters to be passed? We say to Light LLM to pass these parameters to the model that we're currently using, which is OpenAI, ChatGPT model, and we're passing this parameter as well. This is a parameter of tools. So if use tool is true, which we state here when calling this function, then we will unpack this key value pairs. So the tools is the thing that I was just saying. The model expects, the Light LLM expects in the parameters a key called tools, and then the value will be a list of descriptions of the tools that you have. Okay, for example, the one that I just showed you here. Okay, and I'm sorry, this list, did I say string? It's a dictionary. Okay, the descriptions are dictionaries. So because I said a minute ago, I said a minute ago that this was a list of strings, not a list of dictionaries. Okay, yeah, hopefully you caught on that when I made that mistake. And then the tool choice is auto. What does this mean? It means so basically we're saying, or OpenAI, we instruct you to use this tool in what fashion, either auto, or I can't remember its other options. You can refer to the documentation of OpenAI. I think maybe always, or like function, which is like another value stating you should always use tools. no matter the query that the user gives you, you should always use tools. And so even if you think all the tools that we have in the system, if we think all of them don't really match the description of the query that the user wants, you still have to use one of them. So you use the most one you think is possible, even if all of them are really not likely to be what the user wants. This is another value, but we don't do that. We make it auto means if you think all of the tools that we have don't really have a high probability that they will give the answer that the user wants, then don't use tools. Just use a response with normal words, as a LLM always does. Okay. So this is another thing. Hopefully this is explained. And the response format, I explained that before. Returning back to the tool of Search Quran, this is the tool description. The tool name is just a wrapper, it's just an abstraction to get the tool name that we defined above, which is in our case in this file is Search Quran. And the run function is, I believe, what we call, can you please help me out? Yeah, okay, it's in, okay, so this is like an internal function here. It should be prefixed with an underscore, but okay, anyways. Let me actually skip that and go to the functions that we care for here. Run as list and run as string. These are the ones that we call actually in ansari.py. We call here, in the part that I explained before quickly, is that we get the results, we get the final values returned from the function that we have, the tool that we have. We get the values from them, from this function, okay? And again, if you recall, in the context of Search Quran, this will be a list of ayahs. So if the user asks, okay, tell me about the ayahs, the 2.2 and 2.3 and 2.4, for example, then this list will be that. So that's the thing as well. That will give you the most relevant tools from the user query, relevant ayahs from the user query, okay? And it will be a list of strings of ayahs in here, okay? So what does this run as list do? Let us go and see what it does. Session Quran for the query here. So for example, 2:2. And the default number of results that we return is 10. Okay, so we try the 10 most probable results. Obviously, in our case, if it's just a 2:2 query, then only the first result will matter for us, but we return the others nonetheless. And then we run this function, which will return us these ayahs. And for these ayahs, we format them. In this function takes the ayah number from, so this is a dictionary, okay? The results here is a list of dictionaries. So R here is a dictionary. And we take that R and pass it to this function. R here is called ayah. I don't know why it's called, yeah, R for results, okay. And then we take from each dictionary, we get the ID. We get the ID. We get the text, if any, which is in Arabic, and we get the text in English, if any, okay. And then we format it like so. Ayah, then ayah number, and then the Arabic text for this ayah, and then we say it in Arabic, and then we say it in English. So that's a string. We return the string here. So this result will be a string. And we do that in a loop, so we have a list of strings. Each string is an ayah number, and it's Arabic, and it's English, okay? This is what run as list does. As a string is basically the same thing, but this will not be a list, it will be a string. So that's why we say a string, okay? And we separate it with a new line. This is the thing. And so what does run do? But this is the core logic. This is actually where the function is happening, is in .run. So .run here is just an API code. We say the headers that we have, with self API key, which we defined above in kalimat, which is this one, kalimat API key, and this, which is in the environment variables. In the env example environment variables, you should define in here, kalimat. Where is it? In here, token for Quran Hadith search, and then you have payload query, which is a query 2.2 whatever number of results, which is 10 by default. Or did we left it here as 5, but I think we pass it here. Yeah, we pass it, so it's 10 because here default is 10. Anyways, and then the get text one is the Quran. Okay, there's a type of the return that we want. So 1 because it's all hard coded, because you always want the Quran in this case. So the final question is, what is this? What are we sending here? What is this base URL? What is this API actually? If we go together and see it in here, let me exit out the Zen mode and put up here. Okay, what was it? Because that's actually API. I want a second. Will this give me the search? Kalimat. Okay, so kalimat.dev. The API is obviously it won't have a UI, so apologies for that dumb search. Yeah. So this is just a service that allows us to get AI-powered searching for Yeah, she's an Ansari. This wasn't added before. Nice. I'm glad they added that. Anyways, and then you can see an example here into something from the Holy Quran. So if I say 2.2, we get the Quran and Sunnah, and then the Quran we get the Baqarah. ذلك كتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين, and its English equivalent is this. And so that's, if you can imagine now the API. From the API we get that. We get the first couple of results. I'm actually glad that now this returns only the first result. This is amazing, because if I now search for 2 and get the first 10, you remember that parameter, 10 values, it actually will just give us 1, because the API itself will return the nearest ayah, which is the first ayah. So even if we set it to 10, in this specific case we'll only get 1. But if I actually write patience, okay, we get something like these. All of them are related to patience and perseverance from different messengers, from a couple of examples here. And so this is, we can get all of this. We can get the first 10, and we get its English and its Arabic versions, and then we send that. So we have that for here, and then we have all of that is for Quran, which is 1, get text 1. And then for the Sunnah and Hadith, we have them as well in here in English and Arabic. Amazing website, to be honest. So that's a tool that we have, okay? So again, why are we using this tool? Just to reduce the possibility of Ansari hallucinating ayahs and hadith. We don't want to do that. So we try to get them from here, okay? So this one is for the Quran. You see the similar one for the Hadith. But to be honest, the rest of the files structure in a similar way, so I will not go through them. But if you understood this logic, then we're good to go, okay? So now you understand. And another thing that you might have noticed is that I kept saying tool, we have this tool, we have this function, we have this function, we define the function. In the code there is a function. You will see that actually the tool or the function called search Quran, this is technically, there is no actual function in the system that we have is called search Quran. Like we didn't say def search Quran and then all of that, no. But you can imagine we did something like that, and then we say that this accepts a query and this is a string, okay? And in here we put the doc string of this part, the search and retrieve relevant ayahs based on whatever, and that description is what we put in the doc string here. And then in here we call the API of kalimat that I just showed you. You can imagine that, okay? Or that's at least what the LLM imagines. So when I say to the LLM, hey, we have in our system a function called search Quran, which is this description and expects these parameters, the LLM will say okay, and that's all that it knows, okay? It doesn't know, the LLM doesn't know that we actually have this as a class, and this class has these methods, and that we use the run as list method first, which runs the run and PPA methods, and then all of that. The LLM doesn't know that. It just knows this description based on what we gave it. And so what we care about only from the LLM is that from the user query, which is free form text, we just get the keywords that the user wants to search for. So for example, patience, and then perseverance, and then we get these keywords, and then the LLM, the AI is responsible for that, for just summarizing and extracting relevant info from the user, getting these keywords, and then passing that as a value, as a parameter that we told it its name is query, okay? So just have this visualization in your head, okay? Because that's the most important thing about tools. Basically, one last time, when we say we applied tool functionalities in LLM, what we're saying is we tell it, please, from the user query, see if it can be solved, the user's question can be solved by one of the descriptions that I gave you in these tools here. And if you think these descriptions match the user's query, then please extract the relevant info from the user's query and send it as a parameter to me, okay? I'll handle it. When I get that parameters, I'll handle it. How did I handle it? In here, in run as list, I handled it here I handled it by getting the query. This is a query that I got from the AI, okay? And then I handled it by doing this function process tool call, which will use that AI obtained query from the user and then run it in this run as list, which I made, okay, in the code. Just hopefully this logic is now clear to you. And this was a logic of tooling. The only thing that remains is the structure of the messages related to tools. So once we got the query, the results, which is, again, you can visualize now, just a list of strings, list of the ayahs, ayah number in English and it's Arabic. This is a list of things. What do we do now? Okay, we need to define two messages, okay, two dictionaries, and add them both to the message history. How do we make this definition, or what told you that this is what we needed to do? This link, you can visit it. I said here we have to first add this message before any tool response, as mentioned in this source. So you can read about that, documentation of OpenAI. So basically, this is what we're doing. We're adding an internal message. This is a message in the history that we internally add ourselves with a role, the role of assistant. We must do it like that. Read the documentation. We have to hard code this like that. With the content as an empty string, we also have to hard code this. And with a tool calls a key, which expects a list of dictionaries. Okay, and which will be a single dictionary with the type, an ID, and function keys. All of this is hard. We have to persist this structure. See here to understand. I just took it from the documentation. We have to make it like that. After we do that, we say that the type of what you're about to get is a function with the ID of the tool ID. The tool ID was retrieved earlier in the code. You can trace it yourself. It's easy to be traced, to be honest. And then the function from the tool definition. Okay. This definition is another dictionary that I quickly made here with name and arguments. The name is the tool name, which is search Quran in our case, and arguments is the tool args, which is the string itself. So this expects a string. So this should be a string like this. A query. Okay. And then 2.2. Okay. 2.2. We have to pass it as a string. So this is a string. Okay. This is a string. Okay. And then we pass that here. Okay. And you'll see, because the tool args is a string. This is a string that's actually generated by the tool. Okay. Yeah. So we put that here. All of this, we have to do it like that. Okay. Based on the link here. So once we set up this internal message using this structure, we add it to the message history. Okay. Again, let me make you understand why we are doing what we're doing right now. Okay. So we are on the same page. You have the message history. Okay. Sorry, my amazing drawings, which is just a list of dictionaries. First dictionary, second dictionary, and all of that. The first dictionary has a user, or actually the first dictionary is a system message. You remember system? When we said that this is hello, I'm Ansari, etc. This is the personality of Ansari. This is always has to be the first message. And then we have, what do we have? We have a user message with a message with a role user, which says who are you, for example. And then we have a message saying from assistant saying I am Ansari, and it responds. Okay. And then we have this chat like that. Okay. This is a history. So now we want to add a new entity to our conversation. So we have the system, which is just a single message, and then we have two entities, the user and the assistant. We want to add a third entity right now called the tool. Okay, so we want to get the tool's opinion, the tool's talk to us. Okay, and we add that talking to the history that we have connected, the chat that we currently have. Add tool to the chat, and to add it, the tool talks in a certain way. Like the tool has to be written in this message history in a certain way. Or let me rephrase the sentence. The message history, okay, or the LLM understands this message history and understands the way that the tool talks if it talks in the format that I'm explaining right now. What is the format? The format is the following. The tool has to first put an internal message, okay, with the role of assistant, okay, and an empty string. Okay, this is what I explained right now. Okay, this is this part. Okay, so any tool that responds to us, has to respond to us, has to add a message in this format. Okay, this internal message, and then it has to append the actual tool response, which is a role tool. Okay, I'll show that in a second, and the actual arguments that it said. Okay, the query 2:2. So if we see that horrible drawing here, you will see this part of the horrible drawing as the internal message that I explained. Okay, this part, and you will see the other thing that we append, message generated from tool, which is this horrible part, horribly drawn part. Okay, so what is this message generated from tool? It has the following format: role, tool, sorry, and then the content. And here we put in the content something. We put the results string, which is the results of the function, the results of the actual tool that we called in the backend. Okay, which is the list of ayahs. Okay, sorry, the list of ayahs that we have, that I just showed you, ayah number, and there's English and Arabic, list of ayahs, list of strings. Okay, and then the tool call ID that we put here, we put this here as well. So again, in the internal message, what do we have from the AI, from the tool? We have its arguments. The arguments, it has query and 2:2. Okay, and from this part we have our backend code response. Okay, we have that here, which is the list of ayah 1 as a string, ayah 2, and all of that. Okay, so I actually made a mistake when I said a couple of seconds ago that this has 2 colon 2, it doesn't have that. It has this formatting, okay? So when a tool adds a message to the conversation, it has to add it in this format, in this wonky and weird format, okay? Just two messages like this with the keys that I just showed you, okay? But when an assistant, just a normal assistant, a normal LLM, return words in just a free talk, it just adds a message like that, the assistant role, and saying, hello, I'm sorry, I can help you with etc. And then when a user talks to the chat history, they can just add a user role with this message. Like, this is simple and this is simple, but the tool is complicated. I don't know why. The tool has to write in this format, in a message history. So this is the message history. The tool has to write in it in this way, okay? It's just two dictionaries. So again, all of that's being done just to make the assistant in the future. So now this is it, this is the response. But that response, that list of ayahs, we don't just want to show the user a list of ayahs like that. We want to make the model understand this list of ayahs as a like a background for it, as like the context for it, and then paraphrase what it understands from these ayahs and like these ayahs names and etc., and mention them to the user while adding its AI touch, not hallucination, but explanation for it. If the user wants to know ayahs about patience and perseverance, we don't want to output to the user ayah 2:2, ayah 2:5. We don't want to do that. We want to say, okay, here there are a couple of ayahs about patience. One of them is ayah 2:2, which is, and then says it, and then another ayah is 2:4, for example, and then states it. That's the AI like flair. I'm not talking about hallucination. It's just paraphrasing, just rewording what's being said. Okay, so we wanna make the assistant understand this tool's response, and to make the assistant later here, to make us be able to create a message here with the role of assistant and its final paraphrased response to the user. If in order for us to do that, and in order for LLM to do this, we have to pass this message history, and this message history will now include the tool's response. And so in order for the LLM to understand this response from the tool, it has to be formatted in this way. Okay, so this is a summary of why we are doing it like that in the first place, in order for this to understand that. Okay, or like to understand that. Okay, in order for the assistant to understand, the tool has to communicate with it like that. Okay, this is a summary of everything. Hopefully I explained it relatively well, except that for the drawing part. Sorry about that. And yeah, this is why we're doing this in the first place. So we appended the message generated from tool, we appended the internal message, and so we return them. So we return that message generated from tool, and we return the internal message, and we return the actual content, the string here. The content is the result string, and this is the list of ayahs, okay, list of strings of ayahs, but made as a string. We just join the results, and we say an ayah 2:2, and then we say another relevant citation, and then ayah 2:4 or whatever. All of that is just a single string. We put that single string in result string and pass it here, and all of that's now added as a context to the LLM when it answers the user question. And so how does it do that? When does it do that? It does that in the following. After a process tool calls finish, we now have set its responses in the message history, in the message history attribute of ansari. And so we continue here, it's logged in the database, and then this function ends. When this function ends, we go back where? We go back here. And when we go back here in the process message history, we finish this loop, okay, or we finish this part of the loop, and then we come back to the while. While the role is not assistant, or the tool call ID is not in the last message. This is the case. This is actually a case, because the last message that's currently sent here at this point is this one, okay? This is the last message that's currently in the history. And so this is not an assistant message. So we enter here one last time, if I recall correctly. We enter here one last time, and we say, okay, please take the message history, internally it will take it in here, and use it one last time to process it to generate an answer. So now it will take all of this part, okay, in the message history, and the model will now deduce, when we're calling the light LLM completion, this call, it will now, because we passed in auto, here, so now it will automatically choose that, okay, based on this context now, I don't need to answer with the tool again, I'll answer with the model itself, and so I will not use the tool and just use words. And so it will use words to generate this answer here, based on this context here, and then that answer will make the last message in the history assistant. And so when we return back to that loop, it will have the final rule assistant, so this will be false, like all of these will be false, and the while will exit. and that will be the message returned to the user. And that is it. That is literally the what's happening here. And again, it will be technically returned to the user using the yield, because we're leading. So when we're leading, this yield will temporarily halt the function here in order to return bit by bit in the replace message history here, which is mentioned in the complete in main API, which I explained before. I think that was the most complicated part of the entire code base, but hopefully explained it. Now this was the trickiest part. Anything else should be easier, and hopefully now you have a understanding of what's happening.